A number of years ago, I was looking through some resumes for a position my company was hiring for, and something caught my eye with one of the candidates. This candidate was the former captain of the Cal baseball team, and he had an Asian last name. I had never met another Asian who was the captain of a D1 college baseball team. Well, that candidate was Eddie Hsieh, who is my guest on the podcast today. We ended up hiring Eddie, and he and I really connected due to our similar backgrounds and upbringings, similar business interests, and of course, our love of sports. We've talked about his baseball experience before, but this podcast is the first time that we've done a deep dive on his career, his training regimen, getting recruited, being an Asian American athlete at the collegiate level, and more. Coming up next, my interview with Eddie Hsieh. Welcome to the Asian American Athlete, the podcast that empowers the next generation of Asian American athletes. My name is Justin Hong, and on today's show, we have my friend Eddie Hsieh, who served as the captain of the Cal baseball team during his athletic career. Eddie was a power-hitting catcher for Cal in 2008 and 2009. Prior to that, he was a first-team junior college All-American at San Jose City College and four-time first-team All-League selection at Pioneer High School in San Jose. He is now an e-commerce technology entrepreneur. Welcome to the show, Eddie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is awesome to chat.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time. So just to get into it a little bit, so you and I have actually gotten mixed up for each other quite a few times, which I find hilarious because you're about 3 or 4 inches taller than me and outweigh me by about 75 pounds,
Yeah.
give or take a few pounds. I was actually telling some of my friends that people have gotten us mixed up, and one of them was like, so people think you're a 6'3", 240-pound former baseball player? I was like, yeah, I guess so. And so I will say I'm personally not offended when people think I'm you. Are you offended when you get mistaken for me?
No, not at all. I think it's pretty hilarious. Just because you're actually, for context, you're my manager. You introduced me to people, and it would take many introductions, if not years, for people to realize we were two different people.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So like you mentioned, so you and I have known each other for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've always really been intrigued by your athletic career because you just don't see that many Asian Americans make it to the collegiate level for a major sport like baseball. So I'm really excited to dive into your athletic journey today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's start at the beginning. What's your family's backstory? Where did you grow up?
Both my parents were born in Taiwan, and my dad did college in Taiwan. And in 1980, he decided to leave everything he knew, leave the language he was comfortable with, and come here and pursue a master's degree. So he came over here, left my brother and my mom in Taiwan while he was getting his studies done. Went to Auburn University for 6 months. He actually only lasted a semester there, and then before it was tough on him from a language standpoint, and just like socially, he wasn't getting along with anybody. And before he was going to go back to Taiwan, he had an uncle in Arizona said, "Hey, apply for U of A. Come out here. It's pretty great. There's a lot of people that I think you can make friends with." So he went there, got a master's of physics, and kind of the rest is history. My brother came out, I think 3 or 4 years later with my mom. He got a job in Silicon Valley as a hardware engineer, and they had some rough times in the early 80s, but then he got his stride in engineering, and I was very privileged to grow up in San Jose, California. I didn't see any of the hardships my dad went through like my brother did. But yeah, I got to pursue my dreams and go to school, and lived in San Jose for my entire life.
From a sports standpoint, when did you start playing sports? Which ones in particular did you gravitate to?
I started really young, which I think is a key to like success in any sport, especially something like baseball. So I started when I was 5 years old. I made the all-star team when I was 8 years old, and I did both soccer and baseball. I think I started at the same time, and did pretty well in both. Had a short stint of basketball when I was in middle school, but I was never good at basketball. I don't think I gave it enough time, but it was a sport that I never gravitated toward a ton. I love watching it, but I wasn't very good at it. And then junior and senior year of high school, I actually went on the football team. So I was on the varsity football team, was a defensive end, and that was a ton of fun.
Wow. Okay. So let's unpack this a little bit. So you started playing baseball and soccer when you were about 5.
Yep.
Was that just, or were you just playing in leagues, or were you at that point, did coaches notice that you had some special talent and start expediting things? Did you start working with specific coaches, skills trainers, those kind of things?
Yeah. So when I was young, it was really just leagues and little league, and obviously recreational soccer leagues. That was fun. It was really just day camp for me. So my parents could get me out of the house for a couple hours a day. And I would say I'm also very fortunate because in the late 80s, the Bay Area sports professionally was like in a
that's right.
You had the 49ers transitioning from Montana to Steve Young. You had Run TMC with the Warriors. You had Giants that had a Bay Bridge series in the World Series against A's. So my dad was actually kind of, says like, hey, go play sports. He knew nothing about it, but he's like, this is fun. People do it. Like, go try it out. So for the first 4 or 5 years, maybe until I was 8 or 9 years old, it was never extracurricular outside of what the league provides. So I didn't have private coaching. I didn't do much outside of the practices and games that these leagues provided.
Okay. So would you say, so your dad was now thinking that it was, sports are fun. Typically in Asian immigrant families, it's really about academics first. Sports are, I don't even know if sports are considered secondary. They're just not even a priority at all.
It doesn't exist.
Would you say that was kind of shifted within your family? How much parental support did you have in terms of playing sports growing up?
Yeah. It's kind of funny because my brother is 8 or 9 years older than me. And even the way we were brought up and what our parents kind of taught us to do or more or less forced us to do were very different, right? So with my brother, they were immigrants. Their entire future and why my parents were in America was built on education. So for a very obvious reasons, it was like, you're going to get good grades, my older brother. You're going to learn piano. You're going to do SAT prep pretty early on. So, he's also a very athletic person. I just don't think he was given like a very good opportunity early on and was encouraged to play sports. For me, it was vastly different. Like I mentioned, my dad became a 49ers fan and a Cisco Giants fan. So I don't think he ever thought I would go anywhere with sports, but he also had a ton of fun, like watching me play sports, and he pushed me to do it. Not that grades weren't important and not that it was secondary to sports, but they didn't hold my feet to the fire to get straight A's and become the best student that I could be. I sucked at piano and they pulled me out after 3 or 4 years. So it's like, I really lucked out in that sense. And then it wasn't until maybe high schoolish where they're like, oh, Eddie, actually do something here, where they're like, okay, private lessons and things like that. So
yeah. Okay, so you started playing in leagues when you were 5 to 8 years old.
Yep.
At what point was it high school when the thought first crossed your mind, like, oh, I could actually take this as elevate to another level and play in college potentially? Like, when did you start thinking that you could do so?
Yeah, I think when you're young and through Little League, you kind of have these dreams like, oh, well, I'm watching Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds and Giants have their heydays and it's super cool. So not that I didn't think about playing professional sports, but it's really not a reality until you get to those higher levels. Right. So I think the turning point was in high school. And there were a few things that, I wish I did a little bit differently in high school. But around my sophomore, junior year, you see this kind of separation or you start to pull away from the pack. And it's like every year growing up, I'm like, good enough to make the All-Star team, good enough to be top 4 or 5 on the All-Star team. And you have your friends and it's a social thing and you enjoy it and you look forward to it. In high school, when the competition increases and there's first team all leagues, and then there's other, like the West Catholic League out there in the Bay Area that's really dominating certain things, you start focusing more. And that's when it really changed. Like, do I want to do this or pursue this for the next few years and see what comes of it? Or is this like, hey, let's finish high school, get good grades, go to college, have some fun. So that was a turning point, probably going to my junior year, where I was number 3 hitter on varsity at Pioneer, which is a small public school out in San Jose. But I'm like, okay, let's see what we can do here. This is going to be like my singular focus outside of just getting decent grades so I can play baseball.
Right. Okay. So, and you said that was your junior year?
Yeah, going into my junior year.
Okay. Yeah. At what point, because you're a pretty big guy, at what point did you hit your growth spurt? You're what, around 6'3"?
Yeah, 6'3".
6'3", and then when did you hit your growth spurt? When did you start packing on muscle?
I was always a bigger kid on team. I was like never the tallest kid,
Okay.
but I was always bigger. And I was actually super fast for being a very chubby Asian kid. So like in soccer, for some reason, like I could carry my weight and run super fast, even though like
Okay.
I carry a little bit more than most kids. So I was always consistently like top 10% of every single
Okay.
year. So there, I don't have this story of like I left for the summer and sophomore year and I came back 6'1" my junior or whatever it may be. It was always like I'm pretty consistently tall. What did change was like I never touched a single dumbbell probably until middle of junior of high school. So
Okay.
yeah, and it wasn't like my parents said weightlifting's bad for you. We just never went to the
Right.
gym,
Right.
didn't give me gym access. You know, I did a little bit in PE, push-ups and stuff like that. But I think in junior year and going into senior year and before junior college, I hit the weight room pretty hard. My parents let me put a bench press in the garage, and that's when I not height wise, but really started bulking out and getting my strength and developing into a power hitter.
How, like, what is your training regimen like in high school at this point? Like, let's say junior and senior year.
Yeah. So I had that bench press, which doubled as like some weird squat rack where I made it work out. So really
Okay.
that's the two exercises I did 3 times a week. And I remember being incredibly regimented about it. And information back then wasn't quite as easy as like going onto
Sure.
YouTube and finding the 10 best workouts to improve strength for hitting like it is now. So really I would do a lot of research. My brother actually helped me out a ton. Like he would
Okay.
send me articles or he would just shoot me a text message on what I should do. But really I stuck to those two lifts for a very good amount of time, maybe 2 years until I had full gym access at a junior college. But it was being disciplined. It was increasing in weight, at least if not week over week, month over month. And then I forgot, I had a friend whose parents or mother was really into yoga. So I doubled that up
Okay.
with stretching and flexibility and things like that. So not incredibly like, 6, 7 days a week, but enough where I consistently gained more strength than most kids that weren't in the weight room.
Okay. Okay. And then what about from like a skills training standpoint? At that point, were you already focused on playing catcher?
Yeah. So I started catching probably when I was 11 years old.
Okay.
So towards the end of Little League, before high school. And I don't think I ever intended to stay in the crouch for that long. And I, like I mentioned, like I was a bigger kid, but I wasn't 6'3", obviously. So my knees are paying for it now because I stayed in it
Right.
and I caught through college. And I really enjoyed it because it's probably the most exciting position in baseball. But yeah, so catching is a totally different skill though, right? Compared to every single position on the field, except for maybe pitcher. So that's really that junior year of high school when I told my parents this is what I wanted to pursue, or at least I want some help doing it. That's when I had private coaching lessons with a guy named Jason
Okay.
Campbell. I had private hitting lessons with another coach out in De Anza College. So it was really like tacked on maybe an extra 5 to 7 hours every single week on top of my practice and on top of school.
Okay.
So that's when I started feeling the burden, but also the excitement of being a student
Yeah.
athlete.
How did you find those particular coaches?
Yeah, it was tough. I think for the most part, when there was no Yelp or anything like that, you just kind of rely on word of mouth. I know, I went through probably 3 or 4 coaches that junior year before I landed on my coach, Jason. And it really was going to these batting cages, my dad paying for one lesson, seeing how much the improvement there was and how comfortable I felt with the person or the coach, going and try another one. So it really was just local batting cages in San Jose, finding one that you really like and you stuck to it. On the catching front, there was really only one. There's like this guy that used to play minor league, and he's like, "Yeah, you come out here, I'll teach you a little bit about catching." And it actually helped a ton and probably set my career on a different trajectory.
Very interesting. What were they training you in during those private sessions that your regular team practices like that you weren't doing there? Like, what was the difference between the individual training sessions versus the team practices?
Yeah, of course, there's like a level of instruction and just for the technical part of both catching and hitting, which is super important. But really at that level, I think it's the reps, right? If you can get a couple more hours per week, a couple more swings on a tee or someone throwing batting practice to you, or as a catcher receiving and blocking balls and trying to throw out runners, that has that compounding effect going into every single season in high school,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
And that's why a lot of times, like when I think sophomore year high school, when you start playing travel ball, you really see the difference of the kids that played travel ball during the summer or even the fall compared to kids that took the entire year off because they're playing other sports and came back in the spring for baseball. So I think at that age, it really is just reps and repetitions and just getting used to everything.
Were you going year round at this point for
I was
baseball?
I was pretty much year round. I would play tournament ball in the summer. Or spring ball for the school. Summer, I would play tournament ball or travel ball, which is, incredibly competitive. Then you go to different cities and I would travel to Arizona and play the best. But then I also took on football junior year, which was kind of interesting, more so to get in shape and stay in shape for baseball. And I ended up falling in love with, but not quite year round, but definitely I doubled my season from spring to summer.
How did that impact the academic side of things?
Yeah, it was tough. To say the least. I'm definitely not like a Jeremy Lin where I could go like get a 4.0, go to Harvard, and then also be in the NBA. Once I committed to baseball, I think end of sophomore year, junior and senior year, the grades were slipping a little bit. Never to the point where it jeopardizes me playing baseball or anything like that or staying on the field, but definitely slipping well below the Mendoza line for an Asian American.
Right.
Yeah.
How did your parent, like, were they accepting of the situation due to your commitment to baseball?
I think it was a little bit more difficult for my mom because my brother had incredible success, like getting good grades, picking between Berkeley, USC, UCLA, and some other private schools. He graduated with a computer science degree and did really well for himself, right? So I think my mom always wanted me to be happy, but was also concerned, like, what is this? At what cost are we allowing him to be happy for baseball? So there was a little bit concerned, but like I mentioned, it never slipped to a point where like I couldn't get into like a very good college. I just wasn't going to get into Harvard on my grades. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So in terms of recruiting then, like what did you start? So was it junior year you started getting recruited, or was that more into the senior year?
Junior year, the end of the season, the talks start, and you see some, usually because I went to a small public school, it's not like we had scouts at every game like you would get at a Bellarmine up there in the Bay Area or a Valley Christian or something like that. So it was usually when we played one of those teams that I would actually get seen, right? And we would play maybe even Leland, who had really good pitchers just across the town, also a public school where a couple of scouts would show up. So you start seeing people there with radar guns and a couple of things like where there's some buzz going around. Not until pretty much the beginning of senior year did people actually start coming out to practices and meeting the seniors on the team, asking them what's next for them and where they intend to go. So the recruiting process was a total mystery to me. At high school, we again just didn't have the resources. Wasn't a private school that was top in the country or top in the state or anything like that. So very few and far between for opportunities in college or Division I to show up at our practices. But there were a couple. So San Jose State came out a few times. UC Davis came in a few times, and then San Jose City College. I met the head coach, Doug Robb, at the time, my senior year. So that's when things and talks started to happen. And it was kind of nice. They would come out and really they would only pluck the 3 or 4 hitters and 1 or 2 pitchers and then pull them in the group and talk to them. So I was fortunate enough to be one of those and continue my career past high school.
So when they grab the 3 or 4 players, like what are the conversations like? Is it just getting to know you, or are they pretty upfront with like, hey, we have these these spots open. We're looking for 3 to 4 people players to fill these spots, and we're looking at you. Are they direct like that, or is it more so they're just kind of getting to know you at that point?
Yeah, pretty much getting to know you, introducing their program to us. So they would kind of just huddle us up. So it wasn't very direct, like, hey, we want you on the team, let's work out some kind of scholarship. It was very loose. This is our program. We've seen what you've done in CCS in this league. We think you'd be a great addition to the team if you choose to pursue it. And then from there, it became individual conversations, right? So you kind of knew who they were talking to. They came, UC Davis came because of a left-handed pitcher on my team, and you're right. Or San Jose State came because they actually wanted a really strong shortstop, and I was a catcher. So they kind of broke off into different individual conversations, and that's when it gets a little bit more serious on next steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you remember? What schools were looking at you, and then what programs were you most interested in?
Yeah, not a lot. Like out of high school, like I was definitely like you mentioned, all CCS, and I had really, really good years. But I think just the fact that I was at a public school and everyone kind of gives you this: who did they face? How good are they compared to the West Catholic schools? So walk on offer at San Jose State, no scholarship. Walk on for UC Davis, no scholarship. So it was like. And that was really nice because I probably wouldn't have gotten into any UCs without baseballs. But the fact that I could get in admissions wise was kind of cool. But then I think very similar to our work and our business, it's like people buy from people they like. And for some reason, I really gelled with the San Jose City College head coach. And also because they're like, hey, we have a catching spot open. You would only be competing against one other incoming freshman. Both of our sophomore, the second year catchers are going to be moving on. So, there's a very good opportunity from what I see for you to be playing this next year rather than you go into a 4-year redshirting, sitting behind a guy in Division One and not playing until late sophomore, maybe junior year. So the way he framed the conversation was really great. And we just kind of gelled and that's pretty much how it happened.
Okay. And then so now you decide to go to San Jose City College.
Yeah.
Is that what are the leagues in junior college? Is there, like in D1, there's like Pac-12, Big Ten, like what does that look like for the junior college?
No, I think it's a national program. At least it's a state program. So all JUCOs, have the ability to play each other, especially in the States. And we would go down to SoCal and play a few of the JUCOs. So yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Pretty much one level per year.
What was the San Jose City College experience like in terms of playing baseball?
Yeah, it was scrappy. But scrappy in a good, right? So I think from San Jose City, it was fun because you get the exposures, you get the at bats, you face pitchers who are throwing in the 90s. You face people in high school that didn't want to go to a 4-year school so they can get drafted out of first year college, out of junior college, right? So I think there was like really, really strong competition. A lot of the top people in the Mount Hamilton League in CCS, which is where I played, some of the best players that didn't go D1 also played at like West Valley and De Anza and a few of the other junior colleges. So it was actually fun to continue that type of rivalry and and where you're going to and facing very familiar people on the mound. So I think it was a good time. There's a lot less structure though. At a city college, like classes were all over. No one lives on campus. So you're driving to the gym. You're hopefully you latch on with a couple teammates and you can open up the batting cage because the coach gave it to you. So a lot less structured, meaning that you just have to be 10 times more disciplined. So that is kind of where I got like my roots for waking up early, making sure that I get my conditioning done without the coach telling me, hitting the weight room at 24-hour fitness, taking batting practice and making those social sacrifices on a Friday night. I think that regimen that I built out for the first year or 2 years at San Jose City College has carried with me throughout my entire life. But it was tough. You get per diem, you ride in these little white vans with 20 players stuffed in it to go, an hour and a half up to San Francisco, play 9 innings, and you ride that same van back. So it's definitely not the best part or the most glorious part of baseball, but it builds a lot of character, and I wouldn't have traded it for anything. I'm glad I made that decision.
Awesome. Well, all your hard work paid off because transitioning into your Cal experience. Yeah. When did Cal start talking to you about joining their baseball team? Yeah,
that was really exciting times. So freshman year at San Jose City College, I was first team All-American. I think I had 15 home runs in 42 games, which I think was league high. And that's from me is when I really tried to separate myself from the pack. And I think I did a lot of good things and met a ton of good coaches to get me there. So San Jose City was incredibly valuable. And towards the end of freshman year, and very similar to business or everything else, it's kind of who you know. And we had a Coach B, Coach Condro, which he was like a networker. So he would do mini camps for large universities. He would go up to Berkeley and run a kids camp for free just to know people. He would do the same thing at San Jose State, UC Davis, so forth and so on. So he was, I'm very fortunate to have him on the coaching staff that year because I think he was only there for a couple of years. But he's the one that would start conversations for players. He's the one that would sell you to the head coach of Cal or these other colleges. So he made the introduction. He said, "Hey, go help me run a kids camp up in Cal for 2 days. And by the end of it, let's see if, you could take BP for the head coach or something like that." And then he did the same thing for me at UC Davis. And then from there, my stats kind of showed for itself. Like it was kind of an easy sell for him after my freshman year. So that's what I did. I had, I think, 4 solid options after my freshman year. And Coach B said that I should commit before my sophomore year, just in case things happen, right? So whether it's injury or slump or something, but that's what went on. I sat down with Cal State Fullerton, which has an incredible baseball program, but they couldn't promise me like a really strong starting spot. UC Davis again, with the same head coach, and this time they were very serious with a strong scholarship offer. University of Hawaii, which would have been super fun, and then Cal. And I'm not sure how ultimately I came to my decision. I think once I told my parents I could go to Berkeley, I didn't really have a second option.
Cal's got to be top 5 for Asian parents, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome. So you committed before your sophomore year then at San Jose City College.
Yeah.
Okay, that's exciting. So and that was a full scholarship?
Yeah, full scholarship.
Nice.
No, books, tuition, and partly room. The only thing I think there's one higher level where you can get meals. No, I didn't get that, but yeah, it was pretty much a full.
Amazing. So it kind of, I would imagine it takes some of the pressure off while you're playing your sophomore year. How was your sophomore year season?
Sophomore year was also pretty good. It definitely took the pressure off. And I wish I was one of those people that can say I love the spotlight and I thrive in a full count with 2 outs and, in the bottom 9th. But the truth is I think I played my best when there's a little bit less pressure. Yeah. So I had a great sophomore season. It was also kind of nice because I was still going around doing showcases for colleges just because Coach B wanted me to have that type of exposure. So I would drive up to Sacramento, play in a 9-inning game with the top JUCO players in Northern California. And then I would get 6 or 7 calls. And then I was, I had to break the news to them that I already committed. But just to know that, you're on that level and the decision hopefully was the right one was really nice. But sophomore year was great. I think I got even more disciplined in my training because of how real everything was. And then to a point, I also had something kind of to lose, right? Not that I was going to do anything stupid, but my lifestyle and everything in between was stuck to a plan. And that's get to Cal and then from Cal, get to the next level. So sophomore year was great. I kind of slacked on school just a little bit, but I got into
You still got to Cal. You got to Cal.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they have recruiting rankings and those type of lists back then?
Yeah, but I've never been on one of those 5-tool players or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always been, and a lot of those private school kids are, which is awesome. They definitely helps with the recruiting and just any exposure you can get is super important. So I wish I was on those lists. I wasn't. I was just very fortunate to have a coach that knew a lot of D1 coaches.
Okay. So let's talk about your Cal experience. And so you wrap up your sophomore year. When do you start your training and prep for your junior season at Cal?
Yeah. So I would say one of my biggest regrets was in Division I baseball, they usually send players out for wood bat leagues, right? Just so I mentioned for high school, you get all the reps, with Cape Cod being the highest one. Usually if you're going to go in the top 5 to 6 rounds, you're going to be playing Cape Cod wood bats. All the scouts are there, but then there's various leagues for all the other college players. I had a very small injury at the end of my sophomore year at San Jose City College. So my coach, I don't think he was incredibly happy about it, but he's like, yeah, if you want to stay out and just work out at Cal and take reps and, lift with whoever else is there, feel free, but we would really like you to be in this Alaska league. So you can get some reps, and playing with a wooden bat for a summer, you come back to metal bats and it's you gain 10 years of experience because of the margin for error. So I I started training. I moved to Berkeley the beginning of the summer before my junior year. And then I started working out at the gym, started taking BP and batting practice with some coaches that were there, and meeting some teammates that were there, usually people that were injured, because everyone else would go out and pursue a summer of wood bat.
Okay. Okay. At what point are you training? So baseball is in the spring. Are you training all throughout the fall and winter and prepping for the season?
Yeah, it's especially Division I. It was a shock to the system, to say the least.
Okay.
So usually, and this happened between my junior and senior year, they send you out. So during the summer, you're gone. I played 64 games in 72 days, not including bus rides and everything else. And that's what you're supposed to do. You come back in the fall and you might have a couple weeks off, but then like you're right back into it. And fall practices are long, a lot of conditioning, a lot of weight training. You're building up strength. You're building up kind of the sustainability to get you through a 40, 50 game season. And you're also competing, right? The team's not set. The lineup's not set. Nothing is set. So you're kind of stressed out of overperforming every single day, especially me coming in as a junior, competing with an existing senior and then a incoming like stud of a freshman. That was kind of my junior year at Cal. Winters ease up just a tiny bit, obviously with holidays and everything like that. But it's up to you to stay disciplined because the season's right around the corner. Being a catcher, pitchers and catchers always report in a week or a week and a half early. So it feels like I had 0 winter break. Like I would go home, right before Christmas, and I would probably report the 3rd or 4th day of January back in Berkeley. So really no time to have fun. I had maybe like a few good memories with my parents during Christmas because they actually moved to Taiwan when I was in college. Okay. And then I was back at it, 4th or 5th day of the new year for pitchers and catchers. And then it's a full on sprint from there. Like you do a little bit of winter training. You're pretty much playing scrimmages a lot just to find out like who's up to speed, who can face real live pitching. And it's really ironing out anything that you haven't gotten in the fall. And then you go into a full 60 game sprint, which is really difficult to balance with school, especially when you're at a school like Berkeley, which is very difficult academically, but it's also a school where they don't, which in a good way, they don't hold athletes on a pedestal, right? So it's like, yeah, you have to travel with a tutor. You're taking tests on the road. There's like no forgiveness on being late for homework or anything like that. So it was a tough grind, but it was awesome. In JUCO, it was very competitive. But for Division I and Pac-10, it was back to back, like every scrimmage, every single team you played, every single person you faced was, D1 caliber and had the potential to go pro. So it was tough.
Do you recall who some of the, are there current major league players now who were playing in the Pac-10 back then? Including your teammates?
Yeah. So probably most notably my teammate, Marcus Simeon, he was a shortstop at the time. He's now the second baseman with the Rangers. He signed for 5 years with them. So obviously having a very successful career. I think he set this home run record for a second baseman last year or the year before in Toronto. So it's doing super well. Very happy for him. And then another buddy of mine, Mark Kana, who signed a 2-year agreement with the Mets, the New York Mets, and is also doing super well. And then Tyson Ross, who was up and down for majors and minors for probably a dozen years. So I think he's still up there doing super well. A lot of Pac-12, Pac-10 players from those years did super well in the majors.
Amazing. So did you, at any point in your Cal career, did you consider playing pro? Like, hey,
yeah,
is this something that I might want to consider pursuing into the professional level?
Yeah. I mean, at that time, like I mentioned, from high school, right before my junior year, that was a turning point. Until I couldn't play, until I did not get drafted, the entire plan was to play professional baseball.
Okay.
So it's all really I ever wanted. And for better or worse, it probably put a little bit too much pressure on me junior year to do really well and to excel, to start. And I think it turned out to be a pretty rough year in my junior year. But that was the plan. And there were scouts there every game. Obviously we had people that got drafted super high. Actually, I think we had 2 first or 2 second rounders my junior year. So there was always scouts around. And unfortunately I just didn't get the reps or had the success I wanted to play next level. But that was always top of mind for me.
Okay. Okay. So actually, and going back to senior year,
Hmm.
you were elected team captain, which is
Yeah.
an amazing accomplishment. What was that leadership experience like, leading a Pac-10 school,
Yeah.
being the captain of the team?
It was awesome. I think it's a bit natural as catchers because you're already kind of the quarterback
Okay.
of the field, right? So you see everything, and you kind of line up the defense, and you're calling pitches at that age. So you have to get familiarize yourself with the entire pitching rotation. So you build a lot of friends, you build a lot of leadership qualities, you build a lot of trust in the team. So I was super honored to be the captain of the team. I carried that kind of energy into the weight room. I carried that energy even when I had a really rough junior season and a really bad start to my senior year. But it was a great learning experience. And I think that was probably the most valuable position outside of like all the school I'd done, but carrying that into the professional world, that was the most valuable experience I had.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. What was the highlight of your Cal experience?
Yeah, I would say the most memorable was going to playing the Razorbacks in Arkansas. And it's like Pac-10 is really awesome, but then we went to we went to Arkansas. We saw like, wow, this is a baseball college, and they had like really nice seats. They had box suites. They had a beer garden in left field. They would fill up 4,000 to 5,000 people every single night. That was probably the most memorable series that we had. I think that was my junior year because they came to us our senior year. And then the one highlight of my career, like I had an incredible amount of success at a JUCO level, struggled at Cal, but I did hit a home run on senior day against UCLA at Berkeley. So super memorable, trot around the bases. And yeah, that was probably the biggest one. And my parents were in from Taiwan to see that. So it was like, it
Oh,
was
that's
really
amazing.
good.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. As you're wrapping up your senior year, at that point, did you have any conversations with any big league clubs?
Yeah. And up until like the last day of draft, like you just never know. So I was super
Okay.
hopeful. I know I didn't produce the numbers or play enough like I should have to be, even a top 10 or 20 rounder. But the good thing about baseball, or the fortunate thing, is that they have 50 rounds, right? So it's like if you do something or you've had an amount of success, there's a good likelihood that you can get drafted. So talk to the Astros, talk to the Marlins, talk to the White Sox. Obviously, very similar to my high school experience. They were here for our top players, but then they also knew my trajectory. And as a catcher, sometimes they soup you up just to catch bullpens in rookie ball, right? And they'll toss you some at bats. So I did talk to those teams. Even my coach texted me on the second day of the draft to be like, "Hey, keep your phone on," kind of thing. So you just never know. They're doing a lot of things in the background, calling high school players. Are you going to go to college or do you want to go pro? So you just never know what was going to happen. Unfortunately, all the rounds went by and it just didn't happen for me after my senior year. So that's when I really knew.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything in terms of like free agent signings or anything like that for players post college?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually was senior. I mean, both years in Cal were tough. And as bad as I want to play pros, I kind of told myself I wasn't drafted. I probably wasn't going to go.
Okay.
So that one of the other things that is sort of a pretty big regret is that the Orioles called me for free agent signing maybe like a month later. It's like, "Hey, we had a couple of catchers drop off. One got hurt. If you want to come and catch some bullpens." And I kind of had like a bitter ending to my senior year, didn't get drafted, and I was actually kind of over it. And I sat down and talked to my parents. I was like, "What's going to come of it? I'm going to delay my career by 6 months by playing fall ball or rookie ball for the Orioles, and I'm not sure if I should go." That's something which I wish I went. That would have been an amazing experience. You never know what happens if someone gives you the opportunity. I think I was just over at the time and didn't make a bad choice because I love where my career has ended up. But I would do anything just like face a pitcher at the pro level at this point.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you seem like you're at peace.
Yeah.
With your baseball career, the journey, how things ended up. Is that fair to say?
More or less. I think it took a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's it was a dream that I think after my junior college experience, I was like, this is gonna happen, right? So
Yeah.
really, for it not to happen was a pretty big blow to both my ego and just my passion in general. And I will say it's been very difficult finding something in life that I'm that passionate about. So that's tough too,
sure.
right? To wake up every single day wanting to play baseball, wanting to join a team with like one pursuit of just winning a championship. Like I don't think that happens much past sports. So I do miss that a lot. But it took me quite a few years. I didn't watch baseball for maybe 4 or 5 years. I lost track of a lot of my friends and how they were doing. So how are they doing in the baseball world? So it took a lot of time, but yeah, I'm at peace and I'm happy with where my Berkeley education has taken me. So yeah, not too much to complain about.
Awesome. In transitioning to just the topic of being an Asian American athlete.
Yeah.
Did you encounter a lot of other Asian American players throughout high school, junior college, and into college?
Yeah, I would say being Silicon Valley based,
Okay.
it wasn't like there was none. It was definitely the minority. And I think on my high school baseball team, I actually was the only one, but like on football, there were 3 other Asian guys, right? So it wasn't like absolutely unheard of. At the junior college level, there's a really good friend, Gregory Fuji, that was there with me. And then at a Cal level, Pac-10 level, I think there were 3 Asians in Pac-10. All 3 were on Cal. So it was like, it was interesting to see. And it was very encouraging to see, right? Because when I grew up, like you look up to the Barry Bonds of the world, we look up people that don't look like you, but they have the batting average, they have the power numbers that you aspire to be. So that's very different than actually seeing people that look like you playing the big leagues. So, I mean, we had Hideo Nomo and then obviously Ichiro, but outside of that, it was tough to gravitate to. But I will say, I think it's the California thing, and especially this first and almost second generation of Asian Americans coming up now, where definitely the minority, but there were definitely a few on every team I played on.
Nice. So did you find that you and your Asian teammates at Cal, did you guys ever talk about how you guys were within the minority on the team, as well as just playing college baseball in general? Was that a topic of conversation ever?
Yeah, I think we tried to just naturally gravitate toward them. And then we obviously tried to make each other better, especially because none of the Asians on Cal, we were in competitive positions, right? So we had Dwight, who was an outfielder, a left fielder, Danny was a right fielder, and I was a catcher. So like we do our best to hopefully like all of us, how cool it would be if all 3 of us were in the starting lineup. And that was super important. I think just kind of coming together and just chatting through things. They're like brothers to me, and we try to keep in touch as much as possible.
At any point in your career, did you feel any of the kind of like negative Asian stereotypes? Did you feel that was kind of did you feel like you were carrying the burden against those type of stereotypes, or were you already so good at such an early age that you just had the confidence in that you didn't, those types of burdens didn't affect you?
Yeah, I would say they did affect me, but we would get over it pretty quickly. So even I remember my high school experience, like there's definitely the juniors and seniors when the varsity and JV teams would practice together that they would make fun of me because I'm Asian or the only Asian on the team. And then I turned around and hit 2 home runs and it ended it pretty quickly. Right. So I unfortunately, I think that the stereotypes, the stigma and the mild form of bullying was always there. And I think hopefully things will change in the future. It's probably my mom's upbringing, but like I never talked back. I never fought anyone. I never did anything. And I let my play speak for itself. So it's nice that every single situation that I came across, I was able to overcome it because of how good or how much I excelled in baseball. But that might not be true for everyone. So it could be tough. But yeah, I was able to get through most of it pretty quickly from my play.
Okay. Very nice. All right. So let's wrap this podcast up with some quick hitters for you. What's your favorite memory from your athletic career?
I would say that home run senior year, senior day at Cal, like most memorable trot.
Okay.
I had that inkling of, hey, this might not continue. So it was good to get one more home run in.
Nice. Who is the best player you ever played with or against?
Garrett Cole. Faced him, faced a lot of people. Yeah, he's as good as he was in college as he is now.
How many times did you face Garrett Cole?
I'm over 1 with a strikeout.
If you could go back in time and change one thing in your career, what would it be?
I'm very proud of my Berkeley education, and I went that route. But I also know that UC Davis had a Division I program, and I had the starting spot. And if you get the reps at a D1 level, you never know what happens. So, yeah, I might even go to a completely different college if I had the opportunity to choose again.
Okay. What's the best advice you received as an athlete?
We hear this a lot in baseball, but it's control what you can control. I think a lot of times, whether it's an at bat, whether it's a missed call by an umpire, like you let other things affect your play. So really just having that even keel mindset and controlling what's within your control is super important. And I've taken that to almost every aspect of my life.
Okay. Good stuff. Last question. If you had one piece of advice for an aspiring Asian American athlete looking to get to the collegiate or pro level, what would it be?
Take absolutely full ownership over your success. Like a lot of times, especially in sports, we want to lean on teammates. We want to lean on coaches and parents and things like that. Especially these days with the amount of resources out there, like find ways to get to the next level, find the people that you need to meet, find the adjustment you have to make depending on what sport that you have to be in, and take ownership of that. Because it's going to be tough and unfortunately nobody owes you anything in sports. So it's really up to you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining the show today, Eddie, and for sharing your athletic journey with us. Congrats on an amazing career. I learned a ton from you and hope that the audience did as well.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. This was super fun.
Awesome. And so that wraps up this episode of the Asian American Athlete. Please subscribe to this podcast so that you know when the next episode is ready, and see you on the next episode.